Well, the panel is assembling. Let me introduce myself. I am Marsden Blanch. I'm an otolaryngologist by training and practice. I am also a businessman by default, somewhat of an entrepreneur. I'm the founder and chairman of the board of Megadyne Medical Products. With that introduction, I'd like our panel members to just spend 1 minute. We know Dr. Patell. And if you would just take a second and introduce yourselves.
I was the guy who was here a couple of hours ago, and I'm a faculty member at Stanford University.
I am Easmon Otupiri. I am from Ghana. As you were told, I just got in, but I think it'll be okay.
I'm Randall. I just spoke to you as well. I'm on faculty here at the University of Utah.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the first question, and then we'll open it up for the audience to ask any additional questions. We are limited on time, as Dr. DeVries has mentioned, so we'll go quickly through this. The panel discussion is designed to address innovation, which is an extremely broad topic, not only in terms of location and types of innovation, but also what it entails start to finish. And so the first question is this: in terms of innovation and device ideas, what are the great barriers between the idea and the actual bedside use of that device? Dr. Patell, would you start with that? That's as broad a question as the topic of innovation, isn't it?
I would say of the companies that I have seen formed to do this, the biggest problem is the lost year. Most of these companies put together a 3 to 5 year plan, and at the end of year 3, they're at the end of year 2 of the plan. And the unexpected delays, the sort of frictions in the system deplete their energy and deplete their funds. And one of the hardest things for us to do is to get people to write business plans that are realistic about the time frames that will be involved, and to have funders who will support them through that.
I agree that it takes quite some time between when the idea comes up and when the product is on the market. It does take quite a long time. Sometimes the problems are also associated with those who are funding, those who are providing the money for the innovation to come out. They sometimes have conflicting interests, and then that contributes to a delay in getting it out. Additionally, you may find an intervention that has been well described elsewhere, works elsewhere, but governments take time to accept it. And the delay, people at the top level take a long time to agree that they want to try that innovation or that intervention. And that adds to the time lag between when it's developed and when it comes into effect.
I would agree with both comments, and just one maybe qualifier is the markets or the demand. And in my background, it's such a niche, rare disease situation, it's hard to move things forward because there's not a huge demand for it, even though it's emotionally and physically devastating. But then also in the concept of this symposium, the need to drive companies into markets where perhaps the return on that is not so great because of the affordability issues.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience for our panel?
I want to add one part to this, which I think all three of us have experienced. What makes irrigation pumps a lot easier than medical devices is that for a poor farmer in Myanmar or in Ghana, the farmer is the user, the farmer is the decision maker as to whether or not the pump will be purchased, and the farmer is the source of funding. So all the information and all the decision-making rights are in a single person who can say yes or no. In medical devices, and I think it's as true in the United States as it is in these other countries, the user, the ultimate recipient, the patient, is not the decision maker. The decision maker is the doctor or the hospital, and the doctor or the hospital is not the funder. That's typically a government or an NGO. So one of the reasons for the delays is you've got 3 times as many people in the process whose incentives are not always aligned. But this notion of separating the user, the decision maker, and the funder seldom leads to a better outcome.
And there are also other people involved in this too that make the mix between funder and user and decision maker. Those things are changing rapidly as well, which makes it more difficult. So any other comments on that before we have questions from the audience? Okay, questions for this distinguished panel?
So when we travel to low-resource places, one of the biggest problems we encounter is a lack of reliable energy grid or power. We may have wonderful technology, but no power, or at least it is so unstable that it blows out most of the electrical devices that we have for medicine. I'd like the panel's thoughts on how we can address those problems.
Who would like to begin? Major challenge.
Well, I'll comment on that because we do have a big power challenge in Ghana currently. You see, there are 2 sides to the issue. When there's power, you can use certain kinds of equipment. And when there's no power, you can't use those equipment. So you got to be prepared. Now, there are efforts to improve the power situation, but there should also be efforts to develop equipment that don't require excessive power or can use solar energy or other types of energy that can be made available. So we should be looking at all these things when we're thinking about developing equipment for use in certain parts of the world, because we know from the onset that the situation is not the same across the globe.
We have, the course has produced 2 lighting companies. D-Light's probably the most well-known, and Gaza, a solar power concentrator. And while I certainly can't profess to be an expert in solar energy, when I look at those systems, the weakest part of the system is the battery technology. Solar panels are actually, as a device, pretty good, and the Chinese are finding ways to make them very cheaply and reliably and in a whole set of form factors. It's the battery technology which is deficient, and the battery understanding that is deficient. And by that I mean certain kinds of batteries want to be fully discharged before you recharge. Others you can recharge continually, and if you use the wrong recharge pattern from the one the battery was designed for, you reduce its life by a factor of 10. And that's where the human race is not making progress as quickly as you might hope. So if I were going to invest money to make your devices work better, I would find a battery manufacturer to work with you, because I think the rest of the stuff is coming along well. And battery technology just doesn't sound sexy, but that's where you could make a huge difference.
Any other comments?
I agree.
I do too.
I think the efficiencies of the consumption need to be maximized, and there's definitely ways to go after that technology, and then the fidelity of the provision of electricity is the other issue. It goes down, that's a power grid issue, and that you can bring different forces into play there that are well beyond the 10 minutes to working on a power grid infrastructure.
One thing that's brought up a couple of times in this conference has been the availability of cell service where there is no power. And I think that was amazing to me, but something we need to address, certainly. Other questions?
As they say, we're the only people standing between them and lunch.
Yes. Very good. We'll
Thank the panel very much
Sure.
for joining us.